All right, joining me once again here on the Matthew Filipowicz Show is my good friend Gaius Publius. Gaius is a frequent writer for numerous outlets, including Digby, Down with Tyranny, Naked Capitalism, and America Blog, all of which and more you can find at gaiuspublius.tumblr.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at Gaius Publius. Gaius, thank you so much for being on the show again.
Oh, thanks very much, Matt. You forgot my underscore.
Oh, Gaius_Publius. That's true. On your Twitter, it's Gaius_Publius. All right. So, Gaius, we're taping this interview actually on Monday, the day before the Tuesday midterm elections, where there's a very high chance that the Democrats are going to lose control of the Senate. A lot of people are predicting a bloodbath. Even if it's not, it's not like the country's going to be in a much better shape one way or the other. It's going to be bad no matter what. You recently wrote a post for Down with Tyranny on the idea of Tea Partying the Democratic Party, and you actually write that it's already happening in some ways, but not in the way that most of us as progressives would think. Begin by explaining the idea of Tea Partying the Democratic Party.
Well, the concept, thanks, Matt. The concept of tea partying any party goes back to Tea Party tactics within the Republican Party, which means that not Tea Party voters now, but Tea Party candidates are seeking their own advantage within the party, even if they sacrifice party wins themselves. That is, when Sharon Angle goes against Harry Reid, for example, in the last round of Sharon Angle's attempt to unseat, to get a Senate seat in Nevada, she ultimately knew she was going to lose, but she was backed by the Koch brothers, and the Koch brothers were sending a message to other Republicans: we're willing to send the Senate into Democratic hands in order to put our people in charge of the Republican Party. So that's the concept of tea partying somebody. It's to sacrifice the larger group in order to get an advantage for the smaller group. So the question is that happening already in the Democratic Party? And is the perp in that case not progressives, but is it already happening from the people like Harry Reid and people like Steny Hoyer, people like Steve Israel? Is Steve Israel, for example, sacrificing House wins in order to get wins over progressives? And I have a piece up at Down with Tyranny, up at Hullabaloo, Digby's Hullabaloo from last week, that talks about Rick Whelan having this problem with Harry Reid. We've got another piece coming up just Monday morning. Monday, the day before the election, is the DCC even pretending to win? A Tale of Two New Hampshires, about the DCCC's support for the two New Hampshire candidates, the corporatist Ann Custer and the progressive Carol Shea Porter. And guess who the DCCC is supporting? It would be the corporatist, of course. Well, are they even pretending to win?
Yeah, it really, when you kind of really start to examine this, your theory, I think, is actually fairly accurate. And it does seem that the mainstream, your center-right, Democrat, corporatist, neoliberal, we can, evil people, let's just put it that way, they certainly seem perfectly fine with tanking a progressive candidate in order to keep them out of the party, because that's actually, so let's get to the kind of the thought process of what they're doing and how they actually are taking Tea Party tactics to this, because let's go into a little more detail on this.
Well, I would need a research assistant and a fair amount of money to do this, but I would like to go through every House race from the 2006 races on and take a look at where DCCC money went, where the opportunities to win are, and where the opportunities to win were thrown away. Howie Klein has been very explicit that Steve Israel is throwing away the House in order to insert his blue dogs and his new Dems into positions within the Senate, within the House. But we don't have numbers on that, and I would love to get numbers on that. I believe they exist. I believe that the Democratic Party, for example, could have won last time had they not thrown away their chances by backing non-progressives over progressives who had a better chance of winning.
Yeah, and it's one thing, like you write in the piece for Down with Tyranny, how whenever progressives talk about primarying, even just primarying, certain Democratic candidates, not even so much even like voting for a third party like a Green Party or an Independent Party or Working Families Party in places where that's possible. You write like how your mainstream Democrats always flip the hell out. They go Ralph Nader 2000, and which again, any real progressive knows that it actually wasn't Ralph Nader who cost the 2000 election. Al Gore did actually win. The election was actually stolen, and Al Gore ran a horrible campaign. If Al Gore actually ran a good campaign, he would have won by a lot more than he actually did before the Supreme Court gave him the presidency, et cetera, et cetera. We've talked about this, all progressives have talked about this a lot here. But the idea that so many corporatist Democrats, and even some well-meaning progressives, seem to kind of flip out when you kind of talk about that we need to get rid of cruddy Democrats. They start going, oh, no, you're going to give the Republicans control of the Senate. And I guess let's talk a little bit about that, because that's also, you kind of write about how that's actually something that these corporatists are actually doing on the other hand.
Side note, or control of the Supreme Court. Note to Democrats, we already gave corporatists control of the Supreme Court by passing Alito and Roberts. Yeah, Democrats did that.
Yeah.
So, yes, and you used the phrase real progressives know that Nader didn't cost Gore the election. I would quibble with that phrase, real progressives, because I think a lot of real progressives, people I respect, still scream Ralph Nader at you. I mean, I won't name names, but there's some very respectable people who still scream Ralph Nader. The problem is, if you look at progressives, you've got a continuum, but basically two groups. People who are historically aligned with the Democratic Party and people who are not. People who are historically aligned with the Democratic Party have a very hard time taking the party to task in the same way they take the Republicans to task. I'm fortunately one who has never been a Democrat. I've always been whatever I've been, to the left of most Democrats, but I've never been a Democrat, so I don't have that kind of loyalty. It's easier for me. It's probably easier for you. It's certainly not easier for a lot of people. So the question for, quote, real progressives, or progressives plus real progressives, is what do we do in response to people like Harry Reid and people like Steve Israel, and frankly, Nancy Pelosi these days, because Pelosi's the one who reappointed Steve Israel to his post as head of the DCCC.
Yeah.
What do we do when those people give up electoral wins for Democrats in order to keep us out of power and then say, don't you dare do the same? What should we do? Should we take them on and do turnabout as fair play? Or should we say, well, we're the more noble progressives, we should take the higher ground. It really is better that Democrats win instead of Republicans. So even if you're trying to tank the party, we're not.